My friends, did you know that the way your fingers are actually touching the fretboard has a huge influence on your guitar's sound, speed, and most importantly, progress? It seems simple enough of a concept, but a lot of players, especially self-taught players, never really think about the way the fingers are actually touching the fretboard, which results in a lot of unwanted string noise, the inability to break through a certain speed barrier, and also feeling stuck in the rut because you always use the exact same fingerings and finger pairing simply because they kind of feel natural to you. But we want to conquer the entire fretboard and play effortlessly all across the neck as fast as we want, and this is the first exercise that will really help you with achieving that. Alright, as you could see, this first exercise was all about taming that nasty flying pinky finger. It's a problem almost all players are familiar with. Once you use your pinky finger and then you play the next note, it bends away for a lot of players, resulting in a lot of unwanted movement when they are playing. Obviously, this can really slow you down when you're playing, but it can also cause a lot of unwanted string noise. So you don't want it to sound and look like this when you're playing scales. You want this kind of result. So when I'm playing fast and impressive lines like this, I make sure that my fingers are as close to the fretboard as they can possibly be. And as you could see, especially the pinky finger was staying very close to the neck so that I don't have to move back and forth like this. And this first exercise I showed you is really great, because your pinky finger has to remain in that section of the fretboard and on that string, on the 8th fret on the high E string. So you're playing C all the time, but your other 3 fingers are moving up and down the neck. So you're starting out on the same string, but then this happens, this, and that especially feels really awkward. But the first note is always C right here on the 8th fret on the high E string. And this is a great and super effective way of training your pinky finger to remain close to the neck. Pretty tough to force it to stay right here, but since you're not allowed to move it with your other fingers like this, you will see some great results as soon as you're playing scales after practicing this exercise for a couple of minutes, because you will finally feel like you have absolute control over your pinky. But this one is not the only problematic finger. The next exercise is focusing on a different one. Check it out. Right, so as you could hear, that exercise doesn't only sound really cool, there are multiple benefits when it comes to it. First of all, it's based on my favorite chord voicing of all time. I use this one all the time. It's essentially a minor chord, F minor in that case, but instead of playing the octave, so instead of playing F twice, I'm moving it up right here to G. So I'm playing the 9th. So I guess you could call it a minor add 9 chord. You might recognize this exact chord voicing from my song Dopamine, for example. Since you have to stretch a little bit, this is already a great exercise, just fingering the chord. But the way I like to use this voicing for my finger practice is keeping the middle finger, ring finger and pinky finger locked into position like this, but I'm moving my index finger like that. And that's really, really hard, much more difficult than it might look like. Because when you're playing like this, the other fingers instinctively want to move along with your index finger. And it might also feel weird to press down with these fingers individually without the support of your index finger. So as you can see, those 3 fingers kind of remain in position, and I'm only pressing down with them whenever I play the one note that's assigned to them. So they're not always pressed against the neck like this, and my index finger has to jump around between the A string and the high E string like this. And that's a great workout, because on one hand it will train your other fingers not to be dependent on your index finger. But of course, additionally, it's also great for index finger control and independence. So super awesome workout for pretty much all your fingers. But when it comes to your daily practice routine and really gaining control of all your fingers and perfecting your economy of motion, which concerns minimized movements with your fingers and also a very relaxed grip with your fretting hand, you will need a couple more and really effective workouts to make that happen. Because if your goal is playing extremely controlled and relaxed at absolutely any tempo imaginable, you absolutely have to have perfect control of every single finger. And you can either dedicate 20 years of guitar practice to that, just like I did, or you can skip practicing all the absolutely unnecessary workouts that don't get you any results. results. And simply download this week's Economy of Motion practice package on patreon.com/bernd. The link is in the description and in the first comment down below. It comes with awesome play-along exercise videos. Of course, you get the backing tracks, tabs, guitar profiles, everything you need. And working with this easy step-by-step practice routine every single day, it will only take 10 minutes of your time, will solve that super frustrating flying pinky finger problem for you once and for all. You will become a master of finger independence, so you will really be able to feel every single finger as you're playing. You will get rid of all that nasty unwanted string noise, and you will finally be able to play all the cool, fast and virtuosic guitar solos that you always wanted to play. So download this brand new practice package today with the link below. I'm waiting for you on Patreon, but for now, let me show you a couple more exercises. Alright, as you could see, this exercise was based on changing chord shapes once again, but this time the finger that really benefits from this exercise is the ring finger. So you're playing on the high E and B strings and also on the D and A strings, so you're just skipping the G string in between. And when I started practicing with those voicings, I could see that my ring finger was rising a bit when I was playing them. Just like this, so it was moving away from the neck, which is something that I don't want, of course. And I also saw that with the second chord voicing, which is a super common one for a major 7th chord, so C major 7 in this case. As you could see, it was moving away from the neck again a little bit. So by combining these two chord voicings, I got some great results for my ring finger and for keeping it closer to the neck. And aside from all the great finger technique benefits, it's also a pretty good picking workout actually, because you have to skip between all those different strings and you're just playing one note per string. So this can double as both a really cool finger workout with a special focus on the ring finger and also a picking exercise, or picking warm-up I should say. But to focus more on your fingers, I have two more really awesome practical examples for you. So these next two workouts don't really sound like exercises that much. I want to show you some really cool legato licks or building blocks for licks that have a special focus on finger control and economy of motion, just like this one. Alright, this is starting to sound pretty good, right? And it's still a really effective workout for your finger technique. What this is based on is actually one of my favorite concepts when it comes to scales and writing licks, taking odd note groupings. So for the first group I was playing 3 notes, as you usually do with 3 note per string scales, but then I was just playing 1 note on the next string and then 4 on the next one. So by mixing those different groupings together, like 3, 1, 4 and so on, I get really cool and interesting sounding licks. But in order to play this really fast and clean with legato, I want to make sure that my fingers are close to the neck, which is difficult since you're performing hammer-ons and pull-offs, so you have to move your fingers a little bit here. But it won't be possible if you want to play it like this. So if there's a lot of movement and you're touching strings that you don't want to touch when you're hammering on or pulling off, first thing that's crucial again is the position of your thumb. You want to place it behind your middle finger, as always, with those faster and more tricky legato sections. And you want to make sure to pay close attention to that pinky finger. So when you practice this one, make sure that the thumb is in the correct position. Make sure that you're not anchoring with your index finger. As soon as you play the note with your index finger, try to lift it so that your fingers can work on their independence. And try to get a nice sounding snapping motion with your pull-offs. So don't just lift your fingers like this. Perform that snapping movements so that the notes are ringing out nicely. If you need some additional help with that, so developing that snapping motion with your pull-offs or playing fast hammer-ons, I made a full 30-day legato course for all of my Patreon members. Everyone has access to this one. It will take you from the basics to very advanced sounding licks and exercises in just a matter of 30 days. So if you feel like your legato is lacking, this is your calling. Check out this course, it will help you out a lot. And here's the final exercise, also based on this awesome playing style. Alright, as you could hear, this was another kind of cool sounding practical lick or building block that you can use for your legato lines. What makes this one a great exercise for your fingers is that it's isolating your ring finger once again, which can be a problematic finger, and you have to focus on getting clean sounding hammer-ons and pull-offs on the higher strings, so on the G and B string in this case. To achieve that, I once again have my thumb behind my middle finger, and I want to make sure to not move my ring finger too much because I constantly need it on the B string. Cool thing when it comes to the picking of this lick is that there's a short kind of economy picking or sweep picking section, if you'd like. It's just one picking stroke for the first couple of notes. Then I'm performing an upstroke for my note with the ring finger on the B string, G in that case, on the 8th fret. And then another upstroke for the next note on the G string. So just a short kind of sweep or economy picking twist when it comes to the picking movement. So the kind of odd phrasing and finger pairing with this one makes it sound really, really complex and advanced, I would say. Very cool. And one really important additional detail that you want to pay attention to. You definitely don't want these two notes to overlap, so you really just want to play one quick note on the B string without getting any overlapping notes right here. And especially at faster tempos that can get really, really tricky. And as an additional challenge, you also have to move it down, which makes it maybe a bit harder depending on your finger technique and the way you naturally position your thumb, because you have to stretch a little bit more in the lower section of the fretboard. So a lot of things to keep in mind when it comes to this exercise, which makes it my favorite one of today's video. So if you're ready to finally take your economy of motion to the next level, make sure to download the new practice package I made for all my members on Patreon, with the link down below, patreon.com/burned. You can find it in the description and also in the first comment. As soon as you join us over there, you also get access to over 20 guitar courses that I made for all my Patreon members. As I mentioned, absolutely everyone over there has access to these courses. I made full 30-day packages for alternate picking, sweep picking, tapping, pretty much any technique imaginable, and also some really cool music theory courses. So if you're still not part of the world's biggest guitar community on Patreon, sign up today with the link down below. Thanks for watching. Greetings from Vienna and bye bye.